All right, on to the meat of things, press releases. This is what the main interface that you're going to be in, in your day-to-day interactions with us. There's 3 different release-related tabs. You have your queued orders. These are the things that are kind of waiting to be ordered. You have in progress, which is stuff that is in flight. And then you have all of the press releases that are published and have gone out and are all set. And then you have here your scheduled orders across, across all of your organizations. So when you're going to place an order, you click order press release. You're first going to get a drop down here, and you have to choose who you're going to send out the press release for. Then you're going to give it a description. This description is internal only. It shows up. Let me show you here. It shows up right here. It only shows up on our interface. This doesn't go out on the wire at all or anything like that. So this is something you might have an order number on your end. You might have a client reference on your end, some sort of shorthand, whatever it is, you can put that in here so that you can identify what this press release is. You can submit fully written content. So you'd put the headline in here, put the body in here and call it good. Or you can use our release writing service, which is typically what most people do. We do say that it's 5 business days as a typical turnaround. Right now, our typical turnaround, since we've made such improvements in our writing pipeline, is closer to 1 business day. So you can kind of ignore some of this. The words that are included in the title of the release are going to be considered broad match. So we could type press release distribution. We try and include it like this, but we may have to say distribution of press releases, or something like that in order for it to actually flow, although it wouldn't be releases because, we will literally go word by word and make sure that every single word is in that title. Try not to get too terribly long. Some people put in long phrases here. This is really your top subject keyword that you're trying to target, so don't go long tail here. And sometimes people don't even use it for keywords, they use it for more branding related stuff as well. So then you would give us the links that you want us to link to. So you'd put the URL in the first box, and then you'd use an anchor text, right? So in this case, we'll include the word website somewhere in the press release, and it will automatically be a link to pressadvantage.com. If we left this empty, then we will put pressadvantage.com in the press release somewhere, and it will automatically get linkified. So you'd include your anchor text, here, up to 3 links. We recommend 1 or 2. And then, like I mentioned on our last, one of our previous calls, when it comes to anchor text, I always recommend that you use branded anchors, naked anchors, or generic anchors. You can use longer tail, keyword anchors if you know what you're doing. But a lot of times, I just kind of recommend that people get their keyword relevance from other places and from in content context and things like that, as opposed to using anchors, because when a press release goes out to 500 different outlets, you can really throw your your anchor text ratios out of whack. So be careful there. We've talked about linking structures, in an earlier one, so I'm not going to go over, kind of the other recommendations and things like that. This is where you tell us what you want us to write about. We really need about a paragraph here. If you don't give us very much, it's going to be tough for us to give you a great press release, and you might not be happy with what you get. You can give us all kinds of information as well if you want, and that's okay too. But by and large, a paragraph or 2 is good. Give us a little bit of an angle. We've talked about this before as well, but don't get too crazy with kind of how newsworthy it has to be. It can be pretty simple at the end of the day if you want it to be. We always include quotes in press releases. So if you don't have quotes of your own, then we are happy to create them. Otherwise, you would put in a quote here, and we will use those quotes in the press release. If you are not already adding the retargeting pixel, then you can add it here. So let's say you only want to do it once in a while, you'd do this here. If you always want to do it, you'd make that change in the organization page. I always recommend that you embed a video. You just drop the watch URL in here, not the embed URL or any sort of embed code. I do recommend that you only use YouTube videos. We do support Vimeo embeds because some people like it, but you will get a lot of search engine juice, so to speak, out of a YouTube video, and Vimeo is kind of pointless for that. So for an image embed, you can embed it later, and how that looks like is when it comes back from our writers, you're going to have a box that looks just like that. And you can see there's a little image button here where you can add an image. We don't recommend that you do it this way. We always recommend that you, do it here. Give us the URL. That URL should be on something that's relevant to that client. So it's their homepage. It's maybe a GMP image or something, something like that. Something that's going to kind of help beef up the that client, that entity in Google's eyes. Because if you are sending it to us, I mean, yeah, you're helping us out a little bit. We're going to show up in Google image search. We don't necessarily want that. We want your client to show up in Google image search. So make sure that you're hosting this on somewhere that's relevant to the client. And then always include a great alt text. A lot of people will use a branded alt text here as well. Kind of whatever you want, maybe brand and keyword or something like that. You can get pretty creative here. Generally speaking, you're going to want to embed a Google map if it's available. And then, here you're going to add any additional schema that you want included just for this press release. So the canonical example that I use for this is you're working with a real estate client. This real estate agent likes to send out a press release for every listing that he gets above $750,000 sale price. And so, he'll set up the main schema for that real estate agent in the organization. And then you're going to craft some listing specific schema, whatever schema is relevant to that real estate listing. And you're going to put that in here, and then it goes out as part of that release. You can get pretty creative here. You can use, review schema. I've seen product schema, all those types of things, can go out here. As long as it's relevant to the topic of the release, you're going to see some value out of it. So you can get as creative as you want here. This gets appended to the other schema that you provide. So you kind of get, the best of both worlds there. And then the last piece here is scheduling. So you can distribute press releases as soon as they come out. So as soon as you hit the button and say this is approved, then it's going to hit the wire, and that wire, service picks it up. Generally, it hits. We push it up to the wire services about every 15 minutes. So depending on when you click the button, it could be right away. It could be up to about 15 minutes. So there's not a whole lot of leeway there as far as timing goes. If you wanted to have a little bit more planning or control over when it goes out, you can schedule it. This is in GMT time, right? Important to recognize that this is in GMT time. So wherever you're at, know how to convert this to your local time zone, and then you just set the time here, and then you'll be good to go. So what happens is, let's say we set this, I want this to go out on July 13th. We go through all the process. It takes 2 days. I get my press release back and I approve it. Well, that press release is going to sit there until July 13th at 1925, and on July 13th at 1925, it's going to hit the wire service. This is great, especially for ecom, because there's a product launch sequence that I teach in that other video, where you're queuing up 3 different press releases around a specific product launch date to really kind of beef, get some traffic and some word out about that product. It's shown to be very successful for folks, but it requires you to schedule everything accordingly, with that release date. Later on, if you need to change that date, you can. If you need to expedite a release and you want it to go out right away, you can. Most people, for just general SEO, are using just roll it out as soon as possible. But there's definitely some reasons to embargo a press release ahead of time. All right, so that's how you submit a press release order. Do we have any questions about that? Greg is asking if we can submit naked anchor text requests periodically. Yeah, Greg, you can use naked anchors as often as you want. We have people that do only naked anchors, and it's not a big deal. How do the instructions per press release differ from the instructions from the client onboarding? So the organization specific instructions, those are valid for every press release. So if we go back to our real estate agent, he may have, something minor that, says that he doesn't want to, talk about, I don't know, lakefront property or something like that. I mean, whatever you'd put in there. I don't know. I can't really think of a real estate agent who would have, organization specific, instructions. And then in the instruction box up here, this is where you'd give the information about that listing that we talked about, the details of that list. You'd probably have a link to the listing on Zillow or something here as well, right? And so you're gonna put all of that stuff that is very specific to this release. So the best way of thinking about it is anything that is specific to one release goes in the release instructions. Anything that is specific to all releases for that client should go into the organization instructions, because remember, we add them together. And so the writers see both of those. Hope that helps.